So in this video covering Ansible with PowerEdge, we will look at SCP, Server Configuration Profile, Export and Import. And this is a very powerful way to take settings in bulk from a server and apply them to other servers. So the playbooks that we are using today are also on my GitHub account, so you can download them from there if you wish to use the same ones. Now we're just looking at the SCP export file here, or the playbook. And this will then export to a local directory. We have options in here for how to use it. It's clone, and also the format, which is XML at the moment. Now there are other ways of setting this, so let's just go in and access the iDRAC REST interface via a web browser. And we can now see that it's JSON and XML that are the valid output formats. And we can also then choose if we want default, clone or replace. And what's different there is essentially that the output will be the same, right? The resulting file will be the same. It's just that we have certain sections that will be commented out depending on what options we choose there. So run the playbook now, get it exported to a local directory. You can also choose, in this case we have exported all of the settings, but you can choose just to have BIOS settings, just RAID settings, just network card settings, for example, if you want to just take a part of the settings of the server. So now when we are looking at the file itself, we can see it contains really all the information, all of the settings of the server. This can be very useful. If you go to the RAID settings here, you can see that not only are the settings for the controller in there, you also have any RAID volumes included, which means that if you import this to a different server, the RAID volumes will be automatically created, which can be really useful. It does require that you have the same disk setup and controller on the other server though. So we have a lot of BIOS settings too, of course, so you can change. So all of these can be imported in bulk. We can even do firmware updates as part of this. So after we imported the settings, it will also upgrade the firmware. And in that case, what you put here for the repository update is just the name of the catalog file that you want to use for firmware. And the catalog file can be created using the OpenManage Repository Manager software that can be downloaded for free from our webpage. Now, in case that you wanted to just take a subsection of this, let's say just the VNC settings, it's possible for you to just delete everything you don't want and keep the settings that are valid, or the ones that you want to import. So that's what we'll do here. Make sure that you keep the right component part, right? So this is an iDRAC setting, so we keep the iDRAC embedded 1 component. And then we change the port and the password. We just rename this to make it a little bit easier to keep track of it. Since it's VNC settings, that's what we name it. So this is an XML file, right? Containing essentially just an SCP, a server configuration profile. So since it's just text files, you can essentially just upload these if you wanted to GitHub and do version control of them there. Or in my case, I'm just putting them on an NFS server. As you can see here, 10.6.28.32 is the IP, and it's /NFS server config that we put all our files in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this file that we now created, and we'll just use SCP to copy that over to the NFS server. And then we can run a playbook against it and have the server import the settings. So we check now on the NFS server, we can see that the VNC settings XML file is now there. And we create a new playbook for this. We just take one that we have since before, that did an SCP import, and we rename it. Well, we copy it to a new file, and then we edit it a little bit. I'll speeding this up because it's kind of boring to watch me type. And then we update of course, the SCP file that we're importing there. Let's verify that we got the name correctly. And that's it. Then we're ready to run this and import it. But first of all, let's go and look at the actual UI and see these settings changed there. So we log into the web interface of the iDRAC. We'll go to Configuration and Virtual Console, and from there we can check our VNC settings. As you can see, it is now set to 5901, which is the default port for VNC for the iDRAC. The password can't be seen since it's hidden. So we just run the playbook now. Now in this case, all we're doing is importing settings for the iDRAC. You can see here now from the job queue that it's completed already, at least from the UI. The playbook still is working on it. Now, if we're importing settings for something like the BIOS or the RAID controller, the server will automatically reboot once you import the SCP file, so beware of that. But if we are changing just settings like this for an iDRAC or whatever, then that is standalone from the OS, so no reboot is required. You can see here now the VNC server settings has been updated. Thank you so much.